Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
It is I've been favored by the fates. It's my good fortune to actually live with someone who is obsessed with true crime, even as I could give a rat's about it. And she brings it to life for us here on this show, but she is camera shy, which is why you only just see the still picture of her. She's Courtney, everybody.
Hi.
Courtney, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to have you back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nice to have the place to myself.
Was it?
Yeah, well,
Because you could have the place to yourself a lot more if you'd like it. Because I had a great time. No, it was very nice. I'll tell you something that Courtney did, and then I do want to hear about the true crime.
yeah.
But last night, she came and picked me up at the airport, which is
True.
I consider that. And in fact, I don't think we've normally.
No.
I will always
you
take
don't.
a ride, the car. Like I'll take a cab, I'll take a car, whatever, an Uber. I will always a Lyft.
But when you've lost that much money.
Yeah, honey, I literally don't have any money.
Yeah, I've
to,
got to.
to pay for
I've
anything.
got to drive out and pick you up.
All right, so let's camera shy. No, she's making it so nobody. What is this, Eric? Where are you?
I don't want any. Yeah, I don't want any photographic evidence.
That's what Eric Kennedy's saying.
exactly.
Camera shy? No, she's making it so nobody recognizes her when Mark goes mysteriously missing. Well played.
It's true.
Well, without any further delay.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, Tony, when you post this video, you'll get rid of all this, right? Is that how we work? You know, all this stuff about being picked up at the airport?
Yeah.
Maybe. I'll see what I feel like.
Thanks, Tony.
How
About
much effort I
losing?
want to do.
You're really here for true crime is the
Yeah,
point. Okay.
exactly.
Now, what do you have for us today?
I have a case that it's actually a little bit old, but last week the police released footage of a woman being arrested at the airport. And this was a really big case.
Oh, so it's not old. It's just happened.
Well, but she was just arrested last week. This happened in 2014.
Okay.
And so this is Donna Adelson, and she was arrested November 13th at the Miami airport for having a one-way ticket to Vietnam with her husband. And when your son is given a life sentence 5 days before that, you know, when you try to escape the country to Vietnam, which has no extradition, you're going to be arrested by the FBI. And in fact,
see.
that's what happened. She was arrested at the FBI.
This is the
Miami
mother
airport.
of someone who was convicted of.
Yes.
Yeah. And
So-
I know this isn't appropriate, but I sometimes will say things that are not appropriate. I think she's kind of cute for, older lady who's off somebody or might have been involved in offing someone.
Yeah, she. Well, then you're gonna like her daughter, Wendy. Yeah,
I'm rooting for her. Okay, what happens in the story?
So Wendy Adelson is the daughter of Donna Adelson, and
Okay.
Wendy Adelson was married to a man that was killed in a hire for kill plot.
Kill for hire.
Kill for hire that
Yeah.
was arranged by Wendy's brother, Donna's son, Charlie.
So that's Wendy right there.
So that's Wendy, and
She's
that's
very
Dan.
cute. Big smiles on both
Yeah.
of them. They look both a very cute couple.
They're a very cute couple. They're both attorneys. Dan went to Harvard, and after Harvard, clerked for a judge, and then went on to be a professor at FSU. And he and Wendy moved to Tallahassee after he was hired by FSU. They had 2 young boys. And Wendy's family is actually from Miami. So she lived a little bit north of her family, but they are very tight-knit. Can you go up, Tony, to the picture of the family? Yeah. So this is Harvey. He's a dentist. That's his wife, Donna, who you saw at the back of the cop car. She was a teacher and a homemaker. Their eldest son, Robert, he's on the far left. He's a doctor, but he moved very far away from the family in Florida. And then there's Charlie, and the youngest is Wendy.
Well, they all look cute.
They're all very tight-knit. They're all part of the Adelson Foundation, which is a dental practice. That's, again, as I mentioned, in Miami.
Right.
And so Wendy marries Dan. They have 2 cute kids. She is working at FSU. They've offered her a position to sort of court Dan to be there as a professor. They have 2 young kids. And Wendy's growing more and more sort of disgruntled in the marriage. She actually writes a short story about a woman who's married to an attorney that has 2 kids that's plotting to kill her husband. So she gives the story to Dan. Dan sort of thumbs through the story but doesn't really read it. If he had read the story, he might have seen what was coming.
Wow.
Yeah.
She essentially gave him the story that was to be his own fate.
Yeah. And she writes this story, which, was not that great. And she becomes more and more disgruntled in the marriage. And so she ends up filing for divorce. But she does it when he's on a business trip. So he's away, he comes home, and she has moved the 2 boys out of the house. She's moved their stuff out of the house, and she's left on their bed in the primary suite her divorce papers. And so now she's living separately of Dan with their 2 kids.
Okay, so she's getting a divorce. Why was she involved in any kind of murder for hire?
Custody issues.
I see.
It was acrimonious, as they say.
Acrimonious.
Actually,
That's a dang word.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Her parents offer Dan $1 million. Her family offers Dan $1 million to let Wendy move to Miami from Tallahassee with the boys.
Wow.
Would you take $1 million?
I'd take $500,000.
You would just
One of the kids I'm not that fond of anyway. Go ahead and take them.
You would just take the moving costs.
Yeah. Sounds great.
So Dan says no to $1 million in this custody battle. And so that's when this plot starts. So Charlie.
So this was really about custody.
This was about custody and about an acrimonious divorce. So if you go down, Tony, I think there's a layout of all of the people, involved. So the ringleader is Charlie. Charlie is a dentist. He has taken over his father's dental practice. He buys out his dad in Miami, as I mentioned. So I say this because they're all very close. They're working and living together and running the Adelson Foundation. And so Charlie approaches his girlfriend. She's on the right, if you're watching. That's Catherine.
Okay.
And Catherine, her baby daddy, former boyfriend, is Sigfredo Garcia. He's on the far right. Yep. And so
Catherine, I'm sorry, and she was married to...
Catherine was dating Charlie.
Okay.
And she
dating
was,
Charlie, yeah.
And so Charlie approaches her on Halloween of 2013, and he says, "Do you know anybody that could harm someone else?" And she says, "Actually, I do."
Wow.
And so Catherine knows Sigfredo Garcia, and Sigfredo Garcia is the father of her kids. And Sigfredo Garcia and his friend Luis Rivera are hired to murder Dan Markel through Catherine. And it's interesting because when Catherine's on the stand, she says, well, nobody knew who the other people were. I was the middle person because they didn't get along. And so even when they're dating and exes, they're not getting along. But now they don't even realize that each of these people that don't get along, Charlie and Sigfredo, they've been hired to sort of help each other. They're in it together. And so Sigfredo and Luis rent a silver Prius in Miami, and they drive to Tallahassee. And they're following Dan Markel. And on the morning of July 18th, 2014, so what is that, like 7 months after the first conversation, they murdered Dan Markel in his driveway. And so this is Dan Markel's house.
They shot him, or what did they do?
They shot him. You can see it on the left. And it's important, on the right-hand side is Dan Markel's neighbor. So, right. So Sigfredo and Luis follow Dan Markel home after he runs errands and goes to the gym in the morning. They pull into his driveway. They go to the driver's side window and they shoot him twice in the head. They get in their car, they back up very fast, and they drive away. Mm-hmm. And the person who sees all of this is their neighbor, James Geiger. And so James, here he is. That's his view of the driveway. He sees them pull in, and he sees these guys pull out very quickly from Dan's driveway and drive away. So he goes over to see if Dan is okay. He actually goes over twice, and the second time he finds Dan shot in the car. Wow. Yes. So police come, Dan passes away, and all of the family is pulled into the police station. But nothing happens for several years. They don't have a suspect. They don't know who did this. And then they begin
It's so interesting. Divorced couple. They couldn't put together a motive for it right away?
Put together a motive. But they start to suspect the family, so they get warrants, and they start to listen into phone conversation. And that's, in fact, when all of this comes tumbling down.
Wow.
In addition to that, Catherine, who has made a total of $15,000 from the Adelson Foundation in her employment prior to the murder, has now made $45,000 after the murder.
This is, I'm sorry, who?
This is Catherine, the girlfriend, who set it all up.
That lady, okay.
So she's made $45,000 since the murder. She's also had a breast enhancement, as one does. And so there's some suspicion that she's being paid off through the family's dentistry practice in her efforts to have Dan Markle murdered.
Yeah, for having done so. Exactly. Yeah, okay.
So Sigfredo is arrested. Luis Rivera is arrested
because as law enforcement began to listen to conversations, they thought, "Oh my God!"
And all the payoff,
even a couple of years later. Wow,
yes.
That's interesting. And the money, they followed the money. Okay.
So, yes, so they all go to trial. Catherine originally has a mistrial. She says she was not involved. She eventually confesses to the murder. She's given life. So she confesses to her participation in setting up the murder. Luis he confesses to the murder. He turns on his friend, Sigfredo. Sigfredo still says he's not involved, but they all are given life. They all are found guilty for their participation. And then it's not until 2022 that Charlie, the mastermind of it all, he is arrested. And he, in fact, goes to trial in October of this past year. He's found guilty November 6th. And as we remember, his mom tries to board a plane to Vietnam on November 13th of last year. Charlie's given a life sentence on December 12th of last year.
Wow.
So, Donna will go to trial for this.
Why? Help me. The mother's involvement in this, though? I see Charlie was the mastermind. What was the mother's involvement?
The mother was coordinating things with Charlie. It's in fact suggested that she came up with the entire idea.
Because she wanted time with her grandchildren?
Yeah, she wanted time with her grandchildren. She was frustrated with how Dan and Wendy's relationship and divorce was going.
I see.
Yeah, so she was in fact participating. And it was also said that she was sort of urging it along. She was creating urgency in the hiring of these hitmen. And there's, as
there
I
she is in her prison outfit.
Yeah, that's her in the back of the car, and that's her in her prison outfit.
Wow. She almost made it out. Huh?
She did.
So she was on her way to the airport. One-way ticket to Vietnam. She's at the airport.
On her way to. I don't know why you just book a one-way ticket to Vietnam and think you're going to get away with that. Also, you've had 10 years. The idea that you choose the week that your son gets convicted to make the flight out of the country with your husband.
Not well planned.
Not well planned. And none of this is well planned.
Yeah.
Dan Markle's parents, the grandparents of the two boys, have a very hard time. Here they are. That's Ruth and Phil. They have a very hard time getting access to the young boys after the murder. Wendy is holding them very tight, making it virtually impossible for the grandparents to see the young boys. So there's actually something called the Markle Act, which is looking for being passed in the legislature, which allows grandparents better access in certain court cases. Yeah, so that's the Markle Act. I actually think that Wendy looks a little bit like Elizabeth.
Oh, she
Theranos,
does look like
doesn't she?
Elizabeth
I don't know.
Holmes. Yes.
She looks
If you're
a little
watching
bit
on
like
YouTube,
her.
we have a picture of the both of them up.
Yeah, I could, for the whole time, this whole weekend, I was listening to podcasts and watching videos and sort of reorienting myself to this story, which I knew from years ago, and I kept thinking, like, who does she look like? It is Elizabeth Theranos, Elizabeth
Wow.
Holmes of Theranos.
Yeah.
In my mind, they look somewhat similar. Yeah, so. But that's the story. So we'll have to see what happens with Donna Adelson.
Go back to the grandparents for a minute, because I think if you take the glasses off of Grandpa, he's got a Leslie Nielsen look to him. Doesn't he? Does the kind of Leslie Nielsen hair and look?
He does. We're casting the movie already.
Yes, I like it. I like it. There's a lot going
So
on.
Elizabeth Holmes has a job when she gets out of prison.
It's pretty brutal, though.
Yeah,
Imagine.
it's awful.
Wow.
I know.
And all those people, they need to find a new dentist during that time, right? He's,
Actually, when I was driving around waiting to pick you up last night, they had an interview with one of the patients of Charlie Adelson, the mastermind, the son. Yeah. And he was like, I read in the news his involvement and sort of the finding guilty of Catherine, his girlfriend. But he's a good dentist.
Yeah.
So I still kept my appointment. And he was interviewed on one of these podcast series. There was a lot of coverage of this when this was happening.
That's really wild.
Yeah, but it's all sort of come back up in the last couple of months because of Donna's arrest and Charlie being found guilty and given the life sentence.
So Wendy knew nothing about all of this, asks Donald.
No, I mean, it's very bizarre that Wendy has not been arrested, but I don't know if they have enough incriminating evidence to tie her to what was happening. But yes, she actually, there's a joke, and I use
Wendy,
that term.
again, to remind everybody, she's the wife.
She's the wife.
So after the
of Dan
divorce,
Markle.
all of this was done in service of, her kids, moving away down to the grandparents. Go ahead.
So the day of the murder, which is July 18th, the police bring in Wendy Adelson to the police station to interview about the death of her husband that's just happened, Dan Markle. And she says in that interview, which was like 6 hours, my brother kept making this joke about how he bought me a TV as a divorce present because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman. That joke, and I use that term loosely, as I mentioned,
Right.
is something that Charlie Adelson, remember her brother, the dental practice, that he had been saying to a lot of people. I mean, definitely Wendy knew what was happening, definitely Donna, definitely Harvey, and Charlie, arranged it all. So the family was in on it. I just don't know if there's enough evidence to incriminate the father, Harvey, and the sister, the wife,
I
our
get it,
ex-wife, Wendy.
You only have so much. Kathleen Bryant says, no wonder the older son got away from the family.
I know.
Yeah.
He took off.
Wow.
Florida and a crazy family. I mean, you need more incentive
It's all
to
there.
leave.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is the story. So more to come, and hopefully all of them are, found guilty for their participation in what was the hiring for kill of Dan Markle. So
That's True Crime Corner for today.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.